Hey listeners, how you doing? Sean O'Connor here from MacabreDaily.com and the Blood, Guts, and Paper Cuts podcast. And I have none other than Neil McRobert from the Talking Scared podcast with us today. Neil, thanks so much for coming on.
As always, a pleasure to speak to you. Thanks so much. I don't know if you're putting videos live. I should have asked, but if you are, I apologise for this horrendous halcyon light above my head.
Look, I think it's ethereal and it works. You know, you're presenting very nicely on camera. Your handsome face is always good to look at. So here we go.
I've got mutton chops and an angelic light from above, but yeah, this is where the magic happens. Yeah.
The mutton chops are the best. I mean, very gothic. We're going to get into it. We're definitely going to get into it. So Neil, you know what? We'll start from the beginning and we'll work our way. We've got 10 questions, all no gotcha questions, all very easy. But I think this is going to give our listeners and our readers just a great snapshot of who you are, what you do. Look, let's be honest. They already know. Talking Scared podcast is the apex in horror literature podcasts, and that's not me blowing smoke. That's a fact. When we had you on, when we were talking about the movie Terrified, I mentioned that your podcast, to me, has become like Rolling Stone from the 70s and early 80s. Like, if you have to be on it, you've got to be on Talking Scared. So let's start from the beginning. How did it all come about? What was that kernel that turned it into what it is now?
So 10 years ago, I did a PhD in Gothic literature. It nearly broke my brain. I came quite close to an actual nervous breakdown because I basically wrote the entire thing in the last year. A whole load of stuff went wrong. It was a whole mess. And I never used it, and I had no real professional prospects. I was doing a copywriting job for a big company in the UK, a big kind of sports retail company. I was running the copywriting team, hated the job. Pandemic happened. As awful as it sounds, best things that ever happened to me because it gave me space. And I'd been saving to try and quit and write a novel because I'm a white cliche. And I I quit my job in September of 2020, like in the furnace of the pandemic, over here at least anyway. And I thought, well, I'm going to write this book, which I still haven't finished, by the way. And I thought I need something that is a kind of like a regular hit of satisfaction and dopamine, because me just sitting alone writing a book with no outside verification of worth or anything, I thought it's going to drive me mad. So I thought, well, the only thing I know is books. The only thing I can talk about is books. And I happen to have Paul Tremblay's email address for a thing I'd done years before, because I used to be a Gothic scholar, you know. So I had Paul Tremblay's email address, and I just sent him an email. He doesn't know me. He does now, but he didn't then. I said, "Hi, Paul, we spoke years ago. Would you like to?" He said, "Yeah." So I had Paul Tremblay, kind of big deal. And then he gave me John Langdon's email address, and then I got Ellen Datlow's email address. And everyone just said, yeah. Everyone just said yes about it. And I honestly started it thinking, well, not even thinking, right? Just like, this'll be a thing. And now it's like probably 75% of my working life is taken up by this podcast, which still doesn't pay me anything, but it takes up all my time. But I love it. It's the most gratifying thing I've probably ever done. Weirdly, way more than the academic life, which is, you know, all the cachet around that. I have so much more satisfaction and sort of self-esteem and off the back of doing this podcast. I love it. Yeah, it's just a hobby that became a thing.
But look at the doors that it's opened for you. One, the relationships. I mean,
well, that's the main thing.
Your story about Paul Tremblay is a testament to what a fantastic person he is. And then John Langan, you know, I know that you and Nat Cassidy are close. You know, it's just, it opens these doors that turn into these friendships that are so satisfying, and it expands your world, you know.
And they are friendships. That's the thing. They are. Yeah. It's like, I've always had a bit of a cynicism around virtual life. Like, I'm a very tactile, very offline person, or I used to be. Now I'm so glad that Twitter has tanked, because it was just this octopus taking over my life. And Blue Sky, whilst great, doesn't have the same pull on me, you know. Anyway, that's all. But I used to be really cynical about friendships that didn't take place in meat space. And now I have lots of friends. I'm a lucky guy. I have people around me. But genuine friends all across the world, like genuine friends who I maybe have only met once or maybe never met ever, but feel like genuine friendships. And me 5 years ago would have been so cynical about that, but it's great. Every day I'm online, I'm just talking to like the most incredible creators in the thing I love the most, and they're people that I now consider friends. It's great.
The remarkable thing is, and it put me on my heels, was that when I reached out, when we started the Blood, Guts, and Paper Cuts podcast, at that point it was Sinful Cuts, we reached out to all sorts of creators, directors and actors and screenwriters and horror authors. And the horror authors were the one bracket that, without question, we got you. Don't know who the hell you are. We got you. Where do I show up? Is it on video, audio? Okay, sounds great. So giving, so supportive, so inclusive. So what you're saying rings true on this side as well. I mean, it's just been remarkable, the kind of the friendships that have been created and the support that they give. Mm-hmm. It's just been phenomenal. Okay.
Yeah.
So we know how the podcast came about. I love that you went to school. You almost had I don't love that you almost had a nervous breakdown, but you started off in one direction. It's changed into something that is completely different. But I have a sneaky suspicion with the novel that you're working on, and of course the novella that's coming out in 2025, Good Boy, we'll certainly talk about that. But it seems like you're coming full circle into what you started out with. You're doing this now, but it seems like you're going to have your own genuine literary career as well.
Well, one hopes, but I just hope it's not academic, honestly. I never want to write another academic word as long as I live. But yeah, that's the plan, I suppose, is still to be a writer. Like I say, I've got my white cliche badge. I'm a 41-year-old man, and I have stories to tell, and people must listen. But no, I still want to be a writer. And The Good Boy, the thing I've written, is the first thing I've written that I would be proud for the world to see. Before now, it's been a lot of short stories that I like, but I kind of hope. Put it this way, I won't be naming the titles of them. I don't want people finding them. One day maybe they'll be in the McRobert papers in Manchester University, but I doubt it.
All right. Well, look, we're crafting this love story of the podcast that it was just, right out of the gate, all the support, and it's been fantastic. But there had to have been challenges early on. Were there, or am I just assuming?
It sounds so gross to say. I don't think I took it that seriously, right? I think it's when we talk success, right? This podcast is successful within its own bubble, right? I'm not Joe Rogan. I wouldn't want to be, but I'm not the liberal Joe Rogan either. And it still only gets a few thousand listeners per episode, in the first week or so. It makes no money. So when we talk about success, we're talking about opinion, I guess. People who like it really like it. So once we've defined those terms, I don't want to sound like a braggart, the relative success of the thing has always outpaced my expectations for it. So I've always thought of it as a hobby way longer than it was realistically just a hobby. It became a job years ago, but I always thought, well, it doesn't make any money, so the thing that makes the money is the important stuff. And it's completely not. The stuff that makes the money is stuff I kind of phone in. I mean, my employees want to listen to this, that's fine. The podcast is where I put my effort. But because I didn't take it seriously, I think it allowed me to skate across a lot of the hurdles, But I mean, I'll give you some red meat to talk about. So I interviewed Ellen Datlow, third. Have you spoken to Ellen?
Not yet, but that's a get for 2025 for us.
Wonderful human being, love her to bits, incredibly formidable, just a terrifying human being. Like, she's just so formidable. And I lost her interview. I just lost the file. I don't know what I did. It just wasn't there. And I never told her. I just didn't say anything. And I think she does some interviews that she forgot that we'd done it. And when I went back to her a year later,
you waited a year.
We did another whole thing. Yeah, I'm not going to tell Ellen that I lost an hour of her life. So that happened. The biggest actual challenge that I had to handle within the first year was I kind of maybe regret this now, but I had arranged for Joyce Carol Oates to come on the show. And this was at a time when every guest was like a get, you know, because I was just a nobody. So getting in it was like, everything was exciting. And Joyce Carol Oates, I mean, I come from a gothic academic background. She's like the doyenne of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Joyce Carol Oates. And then like 2 weeks before the interview, she made a very Joyce Carol Oatesian comment on Twitter, because I don't think she's kind of an accidental troll, Joyce Carol Oates. She kind of says things that people sometimes read the wrong way, or she maybe it doesn't mean that way, and it never ends well. And she made some comment about the myth of white privilege in publishing, and it just kind of clanged. And I just realised, and Twitter was alight with it, and I realised that if she came on my show, I'd have to address it. And I thought, well, one, my show isn't I'm not Jon Stewart, right? It's not some interrogative, like, interview thing. It's a love fest about horror. So I thought, I don't really want to be the person grilling. I'm not qualified to. Who am I to start? But also, I can't ignore it. So I basically wrote to a publicist and cancelled the interview. And I've never spoken to Joyce since. And she's going to be at an event I'm going to next year, and I might have to speak to her about it. But I kind of regret that. I wish I'd had the nerve to do it and handle it. But it was so early in my interview, because I've not been trained in interviews. I just do this stuff. So I kind of bottled it. But I kind of regret that. But that was the biggest kind of emotional, oh God, what do I do moment in the first, say, year of the podcast.
You know what? I'll back you up though on your choice, because there's the danger of the episode would have just been all about that, which I know you wouldn't have wanted. You would have wanted to touch upon it and move on, but maybe it would have just become about that. So, look, I have a feeling that you'll have the episode with her at a later date if you want to, because of the reputation of the podcast now. So, you know, TBD. The ball's in your court, I suppose. You're going to meet her. Yeah. You're going to see her.
Yeah, I might get drunk first.
Oh, yeah, that wouldn't hurt. That certainly wouldn't hurt. All right, so we've got some challenges. Thank you for that. It's always good to have our listeners and our readers say, okay, it's not as easy as what the perception is. There is hard work involved. What are some of your favorite moments that have happened with the podcast? And look, full disclosure, I'm going to come at you with Stephen King. I did it when we spoke, when I had you on last. I know that that's such a fantastic moment for you, but I don't want Talking Scared to be defined by that. I mean, that's an incredible get. But what are some of the other, just to stick a pin in the Stephen King episode, what are some of the other really delightful experiences that you've had that you didn't expect to happen?
Yeah, I'm glad you said others, because that does kind of ride roughshod across all of it. Speaking to Josh Malerman for the first time set my world aflame.
Really?
And I sometimes worry that I've had Josh on the show so many times, and I'm such a fan of him as a person. We'd never met in flesh. That I'm a bit of a fanboy, and I've made a joke so many times about me and Josh being good friends that I think I may be a bit creepy. I think he may be in Detroit just being like, Neil, we're not friends, and I'm like, I'm kind of in jest, but be my friend Josh. Speaking to Josh is just a delight. Like the man inflames my imagination, and more than that, he inflames my sense of anything can happen. More than any human being I've ever met. I've spoken to Josh about 7 times, and I come off every time feeling like I can run through walls. And the first time was just amazing. We were just got on so well that first time, And then Margaret Atwood was massive for me.
Oh, that's great. Just because,
great. I mean, it's Margaret Atwood. I mean, obviously no one's bigger than King, but in a certain slant of light, Margaret Atwood is one of the most important writers of the last 50 years,
Yeah.
Certainly rivals King. He's up there in that brackets, and that was incredible speaking to her. And again, so intimidating because she's so formidable. And Margaret and I DM sometimes on Twitter about things, and it never gets less of a thrill to get a message from her. She's just a wonderful person. So that was good. I've other people that make my heart sing. Rachel Harrison, who I got on the show at the very last minute because someone sent me a book and I had an episode to fill. I didn't never even heard of her, and I read The Return in it. I thought it was the best thing I'd read all year. And Rachel's just become a good friend of mine now. Clay McLeod Chapman, exactly the same thing. Just a wonderful human being. Nat Cassidy is like my brother from another mother. Nat's the only person I will admit knows more about King than me, including King. Right? I think Nat knows more about King than King does. It's the people you meet along the way. The other thing I will say is speaking to Mike Flanagan and him telling me about his plans for the Dark Tower. He made me cry because, I mean, I'm doing my own thing with the Dark Tower next year. I'm doing.
I was going to bring that up.
But I mean, for anyone who knows, who's listened to more than 10 minutes of the show, they know I have a very special relationship with my dog, Ted. I love him. He's the center of my world. And the character in the Dark Tower, there's certain things I can't talk about without just breaking in tears. And I was speaking to Mike about it on air, and he just gets it. And I remember that's one of the few times I've been openly emotional on the podcast, speaking to Mike about the Dark Tower. So yeah, there's a million other things I've forgotten, but they're the ones that come to mind.
But look, I hope I'm not speaking for you, but you have these guests on, and it's all like your children. You love them all equally. Some delight you more than others at some moments, but they're all fantastic. I'll give you a little secret of mine is that with the guests that I have coming up, like we had Grady Hendrix on not that long ago and Joe Lansdale, and I listened to your episodes with them. It's almost like watching tape. I just wanted to get a feel for, here's the vibe. So you've done a tremendous service for me and, my learning curve of doing this. So, a heartfelt thanks to you. Switching gears now, let me know if you agree or disagree with my theory that horror literature right now, and it's been going on for the past few years, as I said, in my opinion, is having this moment in time that is almost like what was happening with the paperback horror boom of the 80s. It's everywhere. The content is so incredibly good. And it's really, I don't see an end to it, and I hope it doesn't end anytime soon, but it just seems like we're in a magical moment for horror literature. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, I mean, I agree. And I also agree that I don't think it's going to end. I don't think it is a boom, because I think it's too widespread and diffuse now, in a good way. I think in a good way, yeah. People talk about the boom, right? People talk about the paperback boom. There's a great book by a guy called, is it Tony Magistral? And he coins the term bestselleritis. And it was almost like an infective thing, that if you wrote in the shadow of King, you couldn't help but be infected by his success. But if you look at the 80s and the early 90s, well, actually, kind of late 70s, I suppose, through to early 90s, that sort of 15 to 20 year period, there aren't that many good writers. I mean, this might be heresy to say this, but there's King, great writer. There's Barker. I'm not a huge fan, but a great writer. Dean Koontz, we all have opinions on. I think Dean's got some great books and some things he phones in. But Anne Rice doing her own thing. But there weren't that many great writers who were having the success that we ascribe to that period, right? That's
a great point.
There was a lot of people doing a lot of extraordinary stuff, but they weren't having the success that King had. The people we talk about with the 80s boom are largely the people who wrote derivative versions of this very small number of writers. So you had King, the people we've mentioned, and then 10 to 20 other people who were just spinning the wheels. John Saul, who were just people who were just doing lesser versions of this very monolithic thing. Now,
and just churning them out.
Yeah. And horror meant kind of one thing, and now you look at a landscape in which you've got Stephen Graham Jones, and you've got Clay McLeod Chapman, and you've got Eric LaRocca, and you've also got a whole slew of gothic stroke dark romantic, those kind of writers, Isabel Cañas, people like that doing amazing stuff. Like, the net is spread so widely now that I don't get how you kill it, because if you move on, horror has put its fingers into everything to the point that if you move on now, you're taking like half of the culture with you. I don't.
Yeah, that's a great point.
You're not lifting it out and putting a new. You're not going, oh, we'll get rid of that and put thrillers in its place. It's like it's into everything. It's not so much a genre anymore as a sort of inextricable way of thinking about the world. Probably not always a good thing. It's because the world's kind of fucked, right? But yeah, it's just it's like moss. It's got itself into the stonework of literature now, and you can't pull it down without pulling all of it down. So I think it's here to stay, and I think it's wonderful.
Oh, I love the way that you say that it's like moss. It is. It's covering everything now, but in a great way. You know, during the 80s, because that's when I really got into horror literature, but it was all the same. It was white men. You know, I mean, now you have so many different voices that are represented in so many, in the genre itself, and so many subgenre offshoots of it. To your point, it's just wove itself into the tapestry of literature. So I hope you're right, and I you know, cautiously optimistic that you can't pull that blanket without tearing it all to pieces. That it's embedded in there now. So, you know, it's very exciting. Okay. What's been, and you can pass on this one because I know I'm, you know, springing it on you, but has there been a surprising guest that you expected one thing and you got something completely different and it was delightful?
Yeah, well, Carmen Maria Machado. I was so scared.
Really?
Because, yeah, not entirely because of my own weird, I don't know, my own frailties maybe. I read Carmen Maria Machado's 2 books, Her Body and Other Parties and In the Dream House. Maybe I've misnamed that. Is it In the Dream House? Anyway, and they are just such... They're like rightly and rigorously feminist texts. And one of them is so personal. One's, I mean, I don't know if you read it, it's basically a memoir of a terrible year of sort of domestic abuse, written through this multi-generic lens. And again, no training in interviewing people. So I was just like, I mean, I'd rely on kind of getting on with people really and trying to be nice. And I just thought that she was going to be this person who turned up very guarded and very angry and sort of ready to fight. And it couldn't have been more opposite. I mean, and then I had to ask her very personal questions, you know. Yeah. And it was she was a joy. She was just this open, hilarious character. It was a joy. Yeah, she's the person. When I say she surprised me the most, her and possibly, for not dissimilar reasons, Joe Lansdale, who was the person who gave me the big leap in terms of download numbers. And I thought Joe might be this kind of irascible, slightly intimidating Texan dude who had no time for woolly kind of English dicks like me. And again, just absolute gent of a man and so funny.
I mean, you want to hug Joe Lansdale because after speaking with him, you think that he's going to smell like cinnamon and vanilla. I mean, he's just the most affable, warm, delightful person. But I'll back you up, Neil. I was terrified because you email, the correspondence with Joe is very terse. Hey, Joe, you know, you go on for a paragraph and you lay it out and this is what it is. And he emails back, okay. And you're like, oh my God, all right. And then he shows up and it's just, Joe Lansdale is just a warm, lovely human being. So, yeah, I'll back you up on that one. All right, Neil, we're going to get into you now. We're going to wrap up with me prying the lid off and just getting into Neil McRobert. Oh, you're going to get it now. Okay. Tell us about the projects you have for 2025 because they're incredibly exciting and I want everyone to hear about them.
So right on the sorry, that was really nice. You were so excitable then, and I met you by going in a really exhausted, bored sort of way. No, I am excited. I'm just quite tired of this podcast. I'm taking a short break at the minute, and it's replenishing me. So good. I'm coming back in January, and it's kind of business as usual with like author interviews. I do my deep dives into a few kind of key texts. I'm going to do I Am Legend next year and stuff. But I think the big news on the podcast front is I am commencing my own journey to the Dark Tower. And I've threatened listeners with this for a while. And I've been reticent for a while because I don't want to be the Stephen King podcast. There are plenty of those.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
and there are a lot of books to read, and the guy doesn't need my attention to be a success, believe it or not. And I thought the time is now, because I feel like enough listeners now listen to the show because they just like hearing me and people talk about books, that they won't feel deprived if I spend X amount of episodes doing this rather than the main thing, you know. And plus, it's the Dark Tower. People love the Dark Tower. So I've got Nat Cat. The format's going to be quite cool. I'm recording the first one on Sunday. We're going to do the 7 books. We're going to do Win for the Keyhole. We're going to do a few deeply connected texts that I haven't quite finalised yet. So Salem's Lot, definitely. Probably do Insomnia. We may have to do Black House, and if so, we may have to do The Talisman. So it could grow and grow and grow. But I'm getting Nat Cassidy to come along because he just knows it all. And he's a great
you couldn't
talker.
ask for better.
Yeah, he talks about King so well. I'm also getting the writer Chris Panatia, who wrote a great book called The Redemption of Morgan Bright.
Yes!
Amongst others. And I'm getting Chris for 2 reasons. One, he's just the nicest man in the universe, and he makes me laugh like nobody else. But here's the kicker. He's a horror writer who has never read a Stephen King book.
Oh, this is going to be fantastic with the 2 of you and Chris.
Yeah. So essentially, it's me and Nat bullying Chris. And we're going to do a thing where at the end, it's going to be completely spoiler-free so people can read along with us. It's going to be spaced out an episode probably every 8 to 10 weeks. People have got time. And but with me and Nat are going to do extra stuff where we record like a spoilerific version where we basically laugh at Chris for his misguided notions of what's going to happen. And that's going to be it. Yes, it's probably going to take best part of 18 months to 2 years to get through, but it's a nice little bracelet to string along the normal stuff on the show.
Oh, that's time well spent. That's really time well spent. I cannot wait. I'm recording with Nat. We're talking about the movie I Saw the Devil. And if you don't think I'm going to ask him a million questions about your recording on Sunday, you're sadly mistaken. I can't wait for that. All right, let's finish up with another bit of incredibly exciting news for Neil McRobert. Let's talk about whatever you can tell us about Good Boy.
Okay, right. Thank you for asking. So it's a novella. I've been so long-winded today, Sean. I appreciate you letting me talk.
This is gold. This is spun gold. Are you kidding me?
Oh God, my wife would disagree. I've written this novella, and it's part of a project. So, publisher in the UK called Wild Hunt Books, run by a wonderful person called Ariel. Wild Hunt Books are a small independent publisher. They make beautiful books, physically beautiful books. They released a book called Bear Season by Gemma Fairclough, which is this kind of, as I described it, House of Leaves light. It's sort of an academic text that is also a horror novel. Very cool.
I love that.
The project they've got is called Northern Weird, sorry. And they're trying to kind of celebrate the north of England and the underrepresented writers that we have, because there aren't that many of us, like, who really, I mean, I say us, I'm not one of them. There aren't that many of them who've made it big. You've got like Andrew Michael Hurley, Ben Myers, a few other people, you know. It's going to be 6 novellas, one of which is mine, all about weird northern stuff. And trust me, it's a weird part of the world to live in. My offering, Good Boy, what can I say? It's my unintentional attempt, didn't realise I was doing this, to cram something like Stephen King's It into 30,000 words in an English small town, but that does it a disservice. It's basically about a small town that's haunted by an entity, and the only thing that can stand against this entity is a very, very brave little dog. It's about the relationship between the dog and the dog's owner, who they exist in this town, and they live there to fight this monster. But it's a story of an entire life.
I love every word of that. I can't wait for it. Look, just to let you know, Clay McLeod Chapman, he posted on Blue Sky this week, and he said, you know, who are you looking forward to? What piece of literature are you looking forward to in 2025? And everybody had opinions. I'm looking at this then, and I picked you. I said, I'm really looking forward to Good Boy. I cannot wait to read this novella. no pressure, but I just think it's going to be
thank you.
crackerjack. Yeah.
I'm going to go
Yeah,
and find
so
that
look,
post and like it because I'm nothing not an attention whore, so I appreciate that.
Neil, thank you so much for coming on. It's always fantastic to talk to you. I'm going to annoy you in the future to come back. I know that we've got plans in 2025 to do, we're going to do a haunted house movie.
Yeah.
So that's your choice, but I want you to get your rest. I want you to enjoy the holidays, and, we'll talk soon, my friend. Always good. Always good seeing you.
Say, the most impressive thing I've done today is use my massive head to obscure this light. I've been sitting here with this rigid thing for the last 25 minutes just trying to obscure that light. But yeah, no, listen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks so much. Yeah, all right. Turkey. Here we go. All right, Neil. We'll talk soon.